Welcome, everyone. How many of you have ever watched a child grow up? Not like when you were a kid and you watched your brother or sister grow up, but when have you watched, as an adult, a child grow up? Whether it's your kids, maybe a niece, maybe a nephew, maybe a cousin. Have you ever watched them develop a little bit? I never had kids. My wife and I have never had kids together. So when we got a nephew, it was the first chance that we ever had to watch a kid start to become something other than just a toddler. And it's been an interesting journey. So I have an 8-year-old nephew, and he's the cutest kid in the world. Big buck teeth, biggest smile you can ever possibly imagine. And every time he comes over to our house, he shows us just how creative he is, how intelligent he is, and how much he wants to model his world. So he has this little ritual. He comes in, jumps up, gives these big bear hugs to welcome everybody, and then immediately bolts through the house, into the garage, and pulls down all of the empty boxes that we've saved for him over the past 4 years. And his goal is always the same. I want to get all the boxes down, and I am going to make my own Angry Birds live action film today. He does it every time he comes over. Goes in the garage, disappears, and then about an hour later he comes back in, and he has little pigs on sticks that he's made out of cardboard. And he's found the dog's balls that are hidden under the car or in the garage somewhere. And he finds it all, he comes back in and grabs everyone to come out and watch his movie. Drags his dad out, drags me out, drags our dog out, and we all have to see what he's going to do for Angry Birds today. He sets it all up, and he steps back, and it always happens the same way. First throw, bounces 7 times off the garage. Doesn't hit anything. And he'll turn to someone and go, "Epic fail, Dad!" And he'll grab another ball and throw it, and he'll knock down 2 of the 15 boxes. And he'll go, "Epic thrill, Scooter!" Like, no, that's not, okay, good enough. And then he'll take one more ball, and he'll throw it, and the dog will chase the ball through the boxes, and he'll look at the dog and go, "Epic fail, Pepper!" And I was like, well, that's really interesting. Does he think that Pepper, my dog, 11 months old, understands the concept of failure or epic failure? And it got me thinking. As he's developing, he's already learned at 8 years old that failure is something to be mocked. At 8 years old, he's learned 3 valuable lessons about failure. 1, it can be epic or not epic. 2, when it is epic, it should be mocked and laughed at. And 3, there might be epic failure, but there's no thing like epic success. Because when was the last time you heard somebody walk around going, "Epic improvement," or "epic success," or "That was the most epic thing you've ever done, I'm so proud of you"? Like, if you hear that, you kind of walk away going, oh, that's kind of a weird kid, especially at 8 years old, to be doing that. But he knows epic fail. And that's gotten me thinking over the years, is watching him grow up. What are we teaching our children, and when do we start to learn that failure is something to be avoided instead of something to be reveled? When you think about the whole concept of failure, there's so many studies that have been done on it, but the one that always stands out most to me is there was a lady named Catherine Schultz that did a TED Talk in 2011. And she considers herself a wrongologist, which is a great little title for someone to say, I wonder what a wrongologist does. She did this TED Talk about what it means to be wrong. And she took the stage in 2011, went out to a giant room in Boston, and asked everybody, what does it feel like to be wrong? So let me ask you, what does it feel like to be wrong? Are you happy when you're wrong? Disappointed. Sad? Upset? Embarrassed? Then what she said next changed my perception on what failure was, what being wrong was. Because what she said was very poignant. those answers are perfectly reasonable responses, and that's what everybody gives. But they're responses to a different question. Those are responses to the question, what does it feel like to realize you are wrong? Because in between that moment when you are wrong and when you realize you are wrong, it doesn't really feel like anything. It feels empty. If it feels like anything, it feels like you're right. You're kind of like, remember Wile E. Coyote back in the 70s? He'd run off the cliff, chasing the road runner, and he'd be running, but there was nothing underneath him. He was already wrong when he ran off the cliff, and his feet are going a mile a minute, and then he looks down and realizes he's been wrong to order from Acme Supply Company all these years, and he's about to get hit on the head with an anvil. But in that moment, he's happy. He's catching the road runner. Until that moment, he realizes he's wrong, and he falls. It's that moment, that stigma that we've given to people to say, I now realize I'm wrong. I realize that I failed. That people over time start to not want to fail. I've spent a large portion of my career studying organizational alignment and how people align with what they do, with what they say, and who they are. And I've studied a lot about, as organizations grow, how do you get the people in your organization that fit, that propel your organization forward, and that those individuals do the right things for them. And one thing always comes back. Whenever someone is willing to fail, but fail fast, fail small, and fail forward, growth inevitably happens. Winston Churchill once told us, the greatest definition of success is being able to move from failure to failure without losing interest. But when we fail, we've been conditioned over the years to say, well, if I fail, then that must mean I'm a failure. And at some point, I have to stop failing. We get comfortable. We get into this condition where we stop trying to push the envelope and we do what's safe. And what's safe only gets us where we are now. Edison took 10,000 tries to form the light bulb. And when he did, someone asked him, how does it feel to have failed 10,000 times? And he said, I didn't. I found that making a light bulb takes 10,000 steps. But every one of those steps he took him from where he was just a little bit farther, to just a little bit farther, and a little bit closer to where he was trying to go. Think about your own school experiences. How many of you were the perfect straight-A student in school? Perfect. This doesn't work if you weren't. I was not a straight-A student in school. When I went to 9th grade, I made the most brilliant I thought was the most brilliant observation when we got our first report cards. If you looked at all the classes, there were 6 classes, and I wanted to put all the grades in order. My parents thought I should try to do my best in every class to get all A's, or at least all A's and B's. I thought it would be fun to get an A, a B, a C, a D, and get E's instead of F's. And then I was left with one more. I didn't know what to do with it. So the second term of my freshman year, I set out to go forward and figure out how to get an A, a B, a C, a D, and an E. How happy do you think my parents were when they got that report? I was thrilled. I was like, look what I did. My mom was like, what did you do? My dad was like, let's talk about what you did. And I thought it was great because I had set a goal and I had moved forward and figured out how to do that. But it wasn't their goal. So the next semester, the third semester, I said, well, they didn't like in this order, so what if I flip the script? What if I get E, D, C, B, A? That would be fun, right? So I spent the entire 9 weeks trying to get E, C, D, B, A. And I did. And I got the same reaction from my parents. And a bigger reaction from 2 of the teachers. The A to E and the E to A. Very different reactions. E to A said, I bet you cheated. A to E said, something's going on in your life that we need to fix. And I said, you're right. So next time, I'm going to do I'm going to try to get all of them at the end of the year to go back in order, and I figured out that there was also an I, an incomplete. So I did. A, B, C, D, E, I. And I went to summer school that year. But it wasn't my plan wasn't the same as their plan. I had succeeded in what I was trying to do. It wasn't that I was dumb. It wasn't that I wasn't doing the work. It wasn't that I didn't want to learn. I still went to the classes. I studied. When finals came out, I aced every final. I just made sure that I managed my grades in a way to get something on the report card that I thought was fun. Now, I know it's a little bit of an extreme example, and I don't encourage you to go home and tell your kids, hey, next semester, try to get A, B, C, D, E. Because I know Justin will say, okay, I'll do that. Because I know Justin. But my point is this. We set expectations for other people, and we have other people set expectations for us. And they're not always aligned. They're very different for what we might want out of life and what they might want for us out of life. The more that we learn to fail fast, fail small, and fail forward, the easier we are at being able to change where we're going and make the adjustments in our decisions and our actions to get from where we are to where we need to be. And here's another great example that I personally lived. I went to college to be an accountant, not because I wanted to be an accountant, but because my father knew that accounting was a stable profession and nobody would ever lose their job if they were an accountant. So I went to college, and those were the best 5.5 years of my life. I graduated in 1991. 2 years before I graduated from college, Microsoft 2.05 was released. Do you remember what that release was by any chance? It gave the world Word and Excel. Excel was accounting software. When I graduated, the only computer class that I had taken in my 5.5 years was Computer Science 110. And on the final, there was a question that said, you sit in the blank to work on the blank. Chair, computer. That is what I knew about computers when I graduated. So guess what I became when I graduated from college with an accounting degree but no computer experience? A retail manager. And I spent 20 years climbing the retail world because I had spent so much time in college, all of a sudden I was behind everyone. So I had to find a career because my parents were freaking out that I wasn't going to be an accountant. So I found an accounting job in a retail store and quickly realized I should never do that. So instead, they put me in charge of people. And I said, oh, this fits. The more I was in charge of people, the more I saw that we are complicated. And what works for you will never work for you, will never work for you, and nothing will work for you. But it's okay, because not everyone's made the same way to do the same things. But we don't take enough time as a society and as individuals to figure out what makes us tick. And it's dangerous. Years ago, Myers-Briggs came out with their assessments, and that was the gold standard for a long time. Until Gallup raised the bar and said, you know, we like the whole personality profile, but we think everybody has unique strengths that they can apply to the world and be even better than if you figure out what your personality preferences are. And Myers-Briggs said, okay, they're just different. And companies said, we're going to use those together to try to figure out what people want to do. But a problem happened along the way somewhere. We started to help people figure out how they did what they did. And we told them what they were going to do. But we never allowed them to ask, why is this important to me? And where am I going with all of this? So we had people that had learned, okay, my strengths are I'm going to woo people, I'm going to accomplish things, and I'm going to individualize my approaches because I'm an introverted leader and that's who I am. And the company said, fantastic, we're going to put you in this job, go forth. And the employee said, I am miserable because this is not what I want to do with my life. Slowly, our employees started to say, I wonder if there's something else out there that I can do with my skills that help me grow. And people started looking around and they said, oh, we have this internet thing that allows us to go out and test to figure out what we want to do somewhere else and give us another outlet. The gig economy was born, not out so much of people just wanting to go and leave the corporate world, but because they wanted to do what was important to them. When we talked earlier about your friend makes incredible patchwork quilts out of tin. That's a unique thing. I don't believe that will ever show up on anybody's test from a guidance counselor in high school. Ye shall make tin quilts. I don't think that's a subset that's out there. But somewhere out there, there's a subset that says, there's a way to reach people that have like interests and that I can move forward to help make their life a little bit better. And as people started to get out, they started to follow that advice that we learned, that we saw so long ago when Edison made a light bulb. You take a small step, and that small step, maybe you win, maybe you lose, but it's a small step forward, and it helps you grow. It gets you from where you are to where you were, where you were to where you are. And then you take another step, and then another step, and you hopefully don't get tripped up by what's along the way. But as you do that, you realize, I can either do this quickly and take a bunch of small steps to move forward, or I can try to take a giant leap and go from where I am now to where I'm trying to go and not have anything to fall back on if I fail. Now, I'm not going to get political, but we have somebody in office that's never done that job ever before. And there's some growing pains. The same way you would have growing pains in any job that you took that you've never done before. If I was to walk in and try to become an accountant today, I would fail miserably because I have no foundation to stand on. The small steps give us the ability to risk failing for growth. Every time you take that step, you're putting yourself out there. And you can be ridiculed, you can be mocked. Have we not seen social media in the last few years explode with everyone mocking someone that fails at anything? You put it out there, you say, I want to try this, it doesn't work, and then the haters come on board and say, I told you it wouldn't work, we should shame you for even trying, and now we're going to go and jump on the next thing. But they leave that person feeling, why is it I even tried it in the first place? Because it wasn't going to work, and I didn't. What I learned wasn't how to do it, but it was that I need to hide in the future. I need to be small. Risk and failure goes hand in hand. The more that we restrict people from growing, the more that we restrict people and say, I don't want you to do something different because it scares me. That all of a sudden restricts where that person can go in their life, what they can contribute to somebody else. And it's a dangerous road we go down. I look at my little 8-year-old nephew, Landon, and I wonder, he's 8 now and he knows the whole idea of the epic fail. What's he gonna be like when he's 16? And he has spent 8 more years trying to stay small and trying to hide behind whatever it is that makes him feel safe, instead of stepping boldly into his future and whatever that might hold. I was a huge stutterer. For years, I could not say the word downstairs. I would get down, and then I had to stomp my foot. So I would say down, 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 stairs. And any word with the word down in it at the beginning, I had the same problem. So to think that I would stand here and talk to you and be filmed and have a message is unbelievable to my parents, because they still see me as the kid that can't say the word downstairs. But what they don't realize is that I found something that I could fail small, fail forward, and fail fast. I could train myself to overcome my fear of failure. And we can all train ourselves to overcome that fear of failure. And it is hard. I am not going to tell anybody here that it's easy to stand up one day and say, I am going to risk ridicule because I believe I have something more to give to the world. That's hard to do. But when you give to the world, you're not just giving for your own good. What you're doing is you're giving and you're sharing what you have to make other people better. And if there's no other reason to step forward into your possibility, it should be because you want to make other people and help them step into their possibility. Now, as we step forward, we're bound to trip, sometimes over a wire, sometimes over a person, sometimes over a job, sometimes over a situation. And it's easy to stay down. But if you can rise up, brush yourself off and say, okay, that didn't work. Now it's time to take one more step forward and see where this takes me. You might realize that someday you've become somebody you never thought was possible. I finally left the retail world 7 years ago. And when I did, it really wasn't by my choice. All of a sudden the economy crashed and there was no reason for an HR person to travel the country to open stores for IKEA. If there's no stores to open, it's really not smart to pay someone to go open the stores that you're not going to open anymore. So shockingly, I lost my job. And I had two choices. I could either go back into another corporate world and try to figure out how I fit there, or I could do something that scared the bejesus out of me. I could try to start a company and become a consultant and a coach and a speaker and see where that took me. So I did. And I went to grad school instead of going back to the corporate world and earned a master's in organizational leadership because I wanted to figure out how to reach other people. I wanted to figure out how organizations worked and the people in those organizations worked. And when I did, I wrote a master's thesis that grew into my first book, and that book grew into my practice. And I would have never done that if I hadn't been willing to put myself out there, to fail magnificently by taking one step at a time. And I have failed, trust me, I have failed miserably in the past 7 years at times. But it's also opened the door for me to do things I could have never hoped to do in the world. I ended up coaching Little League Baseball for 6 years. I don't have kids of my own. So the chance of me becoming a coach, pretty slim. Because usually if you find a 45-year-old white dude sitting on the bench watching a bunch of kids play baseball, and they don't have kids, they're called something besides coach. But over the years that I coached, the parents started calling me friend. And the kids started calling me Uncle Buck. Let's face it, I kind of look like John Kennedy. I get it. But I became a mentor to children, and I helped them realize that they might fail today. They might strike out today. They might make an error today. But by investing in trying to learn what to do tomorrow, they take a step forward and become somebody better than they were before. Now the kids that I coached, almost none of them play baseball anymore. But they wrestle, they play football. They go to college on lacrosse scholarships. They go to college on academic scholarships. And their parents all say the same thing. Thank you for investing in our children to help them figure out who they were going to be. So let me leave you with one thought. It is scary to step forward and to fail. But if you don't ever step forward to fail, you are destined to be stuck in the same place you are today for the rest of your life. And if you're comfortable never moving forward and never being somebody better than who you are today, then stay there. But if you want something more, you want to go forward and help other people, you have to risk putting yourself out there, failing small, failing fast, and failing forward. You'll never know how far those small steps will take you in life.